Have you ever wondered why your baby cries so much? Have you thought about whether or not there's a best way to respond to your baby in the first year? And if you're listening and you don't have a baby at home anymore, you have a toddler or a preschooler, would it surprise you to hear that how you respond to his or her needs influences how well he or she may have positive relationships later in life? So the big question is this: how do we navigate through the mountain of overwhelming, often contradictory, and sometimes false parenting information we find online? What parenting information should you believe and apply, and what should you reject? That is the big question, and in this podcast, we will help you understand what underlies your child's behavior and explain how to react in a way that favors your child's optimal development. I'm Alexandra Scherzer, and welcome to the Wise Parenting Podcast. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that we have a first part in this 4-part series on the crucial stages that your child will go through, the 3 developmental stages from birth to about 5 years old. The first episode in this series gives an overview of what developmental stages are and how they help form the identity and personality of your child. If you haven't already, please go back and listen to this first episode. The information you find there will help you to better understand what we discussed today. So, back to today's topic about the first developmental stage. Babies cry, we all know it, but maybe by the end of this episode, you'll view your baby's cries differently. If you're like how I was, you probably don't know that as of day 1, your baby is in her first developmental stage. This means that every experience she has is affecting her development, whether at 2 days old or 2 months old. It's quite incredible how much happens in the brain during these early days, weeks, and months. Learning just how much is going on may in fact change how you parent. You will learn some fascinating points about how your baby's brain develops throughout early childhood, and especially what happens during the first 18 months. Stay tuned for a really compelling episode that may end up being a game changer for you. Now, exceptionally, my mom, Dr. Solomon, isn't sitting with me today for this recording, so I'll ask my questions as usual and tell you what her answers were for me. To start off with, I hope you've now listened to our first episode in this series about developmental stages. As you know, each stage lasts for a certain amount of time, and the first stage starts at birth. So how long does this first stage last? Here's my mom's answer. The first stage runs from birth to approximately 18 months. When she was working with families, she discovered that this was news to many parents. That there is a stage that starts at birth, that it lasts about 18 months, and that it's concerned with mental development was all new information to most new parents. In addition, watching and listening to me as I prepared for the birth of my first child, she realized that I, as many parents do, was preparing for our baby's arrival by reading and talking to friends with children, and you may be able to relate to this. However, she also picked up in watching me that the majority of the information that I got and that was being circulated was related to the physical aspects of welcoming a first child. Topics such as swaddling, nursing, and bottle feeding, SIDS, and a lot about the best products on the market like bottles, pacifiers, strollers, car seats, diapers, etc. And now when she looks back to this time, it's striking because most of the information was related to the physical aspects of parenting, which is important, and little or nothing was related to the first stages of identity and personality development, which one could argue is even more important. The baby's mental development seems not to be on most parents' radar, and from my experience, this is very true. On the other hand, this is quite understandable because when a newborn arrives, parents are focused on keeping her alive, healthy, and comfortable. This doesn't change the fact, though, that although it takes many years to consolidate, personality starts to develop right off the bat. And that's what we'll get into today. So in the first episode in this series, we explained that a child will end each stage with a positive or negative outcome, a specific personality characteristic. in this first stage, what is this important personality characteristic? Here's my mom's answer. To put it simply, this first stage is all about trust. As she explained in the first episode of this series, by the end of each stage, a child will have had multiple experiences, which led her to either a positive outcome or a negative outcome. In this first stage, the positive outcome is trust, and the negative outcome is mistrust. So what does this mean exactly? This means that if she ends the first stage at around 18 months with a positive outcome, she will feel that people are generally kind and helpful. She will also feel that she can trust herself to get others to help her. If she ends the first stage with a negative outcome, she will feel that she cannot really rely on other people. She will be wary of others and also have little trust in her ability to get others to help her. And we'll explain how all of this happens later on in the episode. So seeing as this is the first of all the developmental stages to come, does it play a particular role? Here's my mom's answer. In our podcast, we aim to help parents understand how their parenting has both short and long-term consequences. As she's mentioned before, the way parents react to their children during each stage will have some long-term consequences. Every stage is crucial, but this first stage is perhaps more so. And there are two reasons for this. The first reason is that this first stage partly sets the tone of how a child will act during the developmental stages to come. As she explained in the first episode of this series, how a child ends each stage affects how she will behave in the next stage. Remember, success begets success. The second reason is that the first stage sets the tone for how parents will behave with their child in the stages to come. That's right. Your child's developmental stage affects you. The thing is that parents develop certain attitudes about how they parent because they start out a certain way and tend to continue in the same way. Since stages build upon each other, then you can see how the first stage really sets the tone for how parents will behave moving forward. To put it slightly differently, the way you respond to your baby in the first stage tends to affect how you will respond in the second and third stages. We can't stress this point enough. These early years really do set the stage for what's to come, both for the child and for the parents. In the short run, when a baby ends the first stage with trust, it sets the baby up and the parents up for an easier path later on. For the baby, she will go through the next couple of stages more easily, and she will have greater likelihood of ending each of the stages with their positive outcomes. And for the parents, they'll have a less difficult time dealing with their child in the next couple of stages, which are usually very demanding and very exhausting for parents. She will be easier to parent when she starts saying no to everything, having tantrums, and insisting on making her own decisions, especially when they are inappropriate. This doesn't mean that parenting is ever easy, but if she has a positive outcome, it will be easier than it would have been had she had a negative outcome at the end of the stage. In the long run, for the child, ending the first stage with trust will play a role in her ability to establish positive relationships when she is 20, 30, or even 50. In the previous episode, when we explained the overview of the stages, we saw that there are specific behaviors linked to each developmental stage. Now that we're looking at the first stage in detail, what is the specific behavior linked to this stage? Here's my mom's answer. That's right, there is a specific behavior linked to each stage, and in the first stage, it is crying. That babies cry is not news to parents. What is often news to parents is the enormous importance of how you stop the crying. How you respond to your baby crying is the key to whether or not your baby will end the first stage with trust or not. Let me explain further. If you were to ask many parents, they would tell you that the most troubling behavior for babies up to about 18 months is crying. Hearing crying is troubling, and that's why it's effective to getting a parent up and moving to attend to the baby. It is designed to do this. Crying is how a baby communicates. It's how a baby signals that she needs help. It's how she tells her parents, "Come here, I need something and I can't get it myself." It stems from our beginnings. It's in our DNA. It's intentional for parents to want to help their baby stop crying. If we look at it from an evolutionary perspective, that the parent stopped their baby's cries was essential for survival, because if a baby cried, it might have attracted a predator. We may have evolved some over the past hundreds of thousands of years, and the crying no longer attracts predators, but something important still remains. Babies need help meeting all of their needs. When these needs become acute, they cry. They cry because crying has been the most effective way to get help they need quickly. So that was a global explanation of why babies cry, and for some parents, it can be reassuring to have this reminder that crying has an evolutionary basis and isn't a reflection of their parenting skills. That in itself can be helpful, but not the major point of this episode. The way to help your baby develop trust by the end of her first developmental stage lies in how and how quickly you respond to your baby's cries, which we'll get into. All right, so the main behavior linked to the first developmental stage is crying. As you heard in the first episode of the series, how parents react to their child's behavior creates an experience for their child. The more a child lives positive experiences, the more likely she is to come out of the stage with a positive outcome. Knowing this, what can parents do to create many positive experiences for their baby in the first developmental stage? Here's my mom's answer. This part of the episode is where we'll explain how parents respond to their baby's cries leads to, or doesn't lead to, their baby developing a strong feeling of trust. Babies tell you what they need by crying, and parents and primary caregivers react to crying in one way or another, and this creates an experience for the baby each and every time. If you remember from the first episode of this series, my mom used an analogy about accumulating red blocks and blue blocks in each stage as a way to explain how experiences add up to determining whether the baby ends the stage with a positive outcome, in this case trust, or the negative outcome, in this case mistrust. Here's how parents can help their baby accumulate the blocks, so to speak, for positive experiences so that their baby can establish trust by the end of the first stage. Again, the greater the number of positive experiences, the greater the likelihood that she will establish trust by the end of this first stage. Two things have to happen for parents to create a positive experience for their baby in the first 18 months. The first is that they are able to read her signals such that they satisfy her need. So if she's hungry, they will feed her. If she's tired, they will help her go to sleep. And more importantly, if she needs comfort and needs to be held, they will comfort her and hold her. And the second thing that has to happen for parents to create a positive experience for their baby is that they respond quickly enough for her to eventually make the link between her signals and their accurate responses. Overall, parents have to act quickly enough to respond when their baby signals in order for her to make this link. If parents respond accurately, but too slowly, she will not be able to associate that her signals has called them over to give her the help that she needs. After many experiences where her parents meet her need, she will begin to trust that they will do so. This is the foundation for her to have trust in others. And in order for her to begin to trust herself, that she is an active participant in getting people to help her, she needs to live many experiences where her parents respond quickly enough for her to make the link that her signals are really what will bring her parents the help that she needs. Let's illustrate this explanation with a concrete example. Let's say a baby wakes up from a nap and is hungry. Her parent picks her up because she's woken up. Since she's hungry and so far they're just holding her, she begins to cry. This is how she signals to the parent that she has another need that they haven't met yet. Her parent then reasons that she's hungry and feeds her immediately. The baby stops crying because her need is accurately being met. If this or similar events occur frequently enough, she will come to feel that her parents and primary caregivers will give her what she needs. This is how trust that others will help you develops. But developing trust that others are helpful is only part of what's going on in the first 18 months. The other important part is that she learns that she can trust herself to bring others to help her. When she cries to signal that she's hungry, and her parent feeds her immediately, she begins to develop the feeling that she is an active participant in bringing help to herself. So let's explain this further with a different example. Suppose the parent waits for a while, such as to see if the baby will stop crying, or because the parent is doing something else and the baby doesn't stop crying. The parent then feeds her, and the baby's need will be accurately met. But this is an important but. The experience of waiting will not contribute to her making the link that her cries brought the help that she needed. If the baby frequently has to wait before having her needs met, she may be able to develop trust in others, but will have great difficulty developing trust in herself. In previous episodes, we've looked at the role that inborn characteristics, a baby's temperament, play in her behavior. Some babies simply cry more than others. They cry more, they cry harder, and they cry for longer periods. This question is for parents who have a baby who is a crier, quote unquote. Let's say there are two babies. One is a crier and the other isn't. The baby who is a crier takes close to 10 minutes to stop crying, and the other baby hardly takes any time to stop. It's clear that the baby who doesn't cry for a long time will make the connection that her cries brought her parent over with the milk, for example. But what about the other baby? Can the baby who is a crier make the important link that her cries call the parent over to feed her in the same way that the other baby can? My mom's answer is yes. Even if it takes a baby longer to calm down and stop crying, if the parent responds to her need within a short time that permits her to make the link, then yes, she will make the link, even if she keeps on crying. And this is extremely important for parents to know, especially parents with a baby who is a crier. Being a crier is part of the temperament she was born with. It's the W, the who she is, in our WISE parenting formula. Especially for parents who have a crier, here is some information that my mom thinks you may find very helpful. Without getting into the details about how temperament affects parenting here, and we have an entire episode on this topic available for you to download and listen to, parents who have a baby who is born a crier, technically called a difficult baby, may find parenting more challenging and less pleasurable. Overall, parents are very much affected by how their baby reacts to them. With respect to crying in particular, babies who calm and stop crying quickly make their parents feel good and competent about their parenting, and these parents will respond with pleasure to her. But babies who take much longer to calm down and stop crying tend to make their parents feel bad about their parenting, and this makes the parents feel unsure and even helpless at times. These parents may respond to their baby with less and less pleasure. The temperament your baby is born with, either born as a crier or born as one who cries relatively little, really and truly affects how you feel as a parent and your parenting. So, a crier will often make her parents feel bad, unsure, and helpless, whereas a baby who cries relatively little and calms down quickly will make her parents feel good and competent. The reason for this brief explanation about temperament and how it affects the way parents feel about their parenting was to get to this point. Parents respond based on how they feel. Generally speaking, parents who have a baby who makes them feel good and competent about their parenting will respond to her with greater pleasure. Parents who have a baby who is a crier, who may make them feel bad and incompetent about their parenting, will respond to her with less pleasure. They won't be in as big of a hurry to get to a baby who makes them feel bad, who will cry anyhow, no matter how quickly they respond. So the question was about parents who have a baby who is a crier, and whether or not she will be able to make the link if they respond quickly, even though she may continue to cry. And my mom's answer was yes to that question. But now that we've also explained how babies make their parents feel and how this can influence how they respond, Parents who have a baby who is a crier may go off track if they don't know how their baby is influencing how they respond to her. So again, my mom's answer to my question was and remains yes. Parents who have a baby who is a crier run a greater risk of going off track. They are more likely to have negative feelings about their parenting, as explained earlier. It's natural to act slowly on things when they're more of an obligation than a pleasure. And this is no different in parenting. What often happens with parents who have a crier is that they end up making their baby intentionally wait because they feel that no matter what they do, she will cry anyhow. They aren't motivated to rush to respond to her. The bottom line is that it's essential for all parents to respond accurately and quickly to their baby's needs. But it's much more difficult for parents who have a baby who is a crier to do so with pleasure. They will have to work harder to help their baby end the first developmental stage with trust, both in others and in herself. But knowing more about how a baby's temperament affects her parents and how they will respond to her can really make a difference in helping her end the first developmental stage with a positive outcome and be more likely to end the second stage with the positive outcome. So, in this episode, we've talked about the first developmental stage. The personality characteristic linked to this first stage is trust. And there are two important parts to trust. A baby will begin to trust others and will also begin to trust herself to bring the help that she needs to herself.